everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Amagon, brought to us by Sammy. Amagon is a very tough running gun shooter. Normally your character only has 1 health and 1 hit will cause you to lose a life. However, the game has an interesting gimmick, allowing you to change into a much bigger, muscular form, which gives you a health bar and the ability to take out enemies with just your bare fist. So here we go with Amagon for the NES. There's a total of 6 zones in the game. Each zone is broken up into 2 separate parts. When you start off the game, you see your main character in his normal form, in which case you get hit 1 time, you will lose a life. You use your gun in order to take out enemies, and you can see that you actually have an ammo count at the top center of the screen. Enemies in the game will drop you extra points to your score, give you extra ammo for your gun, as well as dropping the muscle form that you must collect in order to change. Once you have it, you'll be able to press the select button, transform into your Megagon form, which will allow you to punch enemies, or unleash an ultimate blast, which will hurt you, but takes out a lot of enemies. Unlike many games for the NES, the points actually matter. You want to get as many points as you possibly can, because the more points you have, the more health you'll have when you go into your Megagon form. For the most part, the controls work pretty well. You have your gun and your ability to jump. The only thing that's weird though is when walking off the edges of platforms you slide a little bit, and if you're not careful, you may slide off of an edge and end up landing into a pit, or fall into an enemy. Coming up is the first boss of the game at the end of Zone 1-1, and we're going to transform into our Megagon form to take him out. Use your fist to take out other enemies, and then punch the line a couple times at the end to move on to Zone 1-2. In the game, you're allowed to stay in your Megagon form for as long as you have your health, or until you complete the level. Amagon starts off pretty easy, with most enemies only taking 1 or 2 shots to take out. However, when you advance in the game, you're going to find out that the enemies get a lot tougher, and their movements are a lot harder to judge. The best way to get through Amagon is either get used to changing into your Megagon form early and using that for most of the game, or if you want to try for the harder ability of staying Amagon as long as you possibly can, what you'll have to do is learn the patterns of all the enemies. Enemies actually act different depending upon whether or not they're in back of you or in front of you. Enemies, such as the bats that we have in this level that drop from the trees when you get near them, as you've noticed, some bats drop in front of you before you get there, while others drop after you pass. One thing that's very good about the game is that the enemies will always act the same way. For example, if a bat falls from the tree in front of you, when you play the game over again, that same tree bat will still once again fall in front of you. So you can learn their movements and patterns, and get used to what you need to do in order to take out enemies. It pays to move really slowly in Amagon, slowly making your way through. Thankfully, you have no time limit, so you can take all the time you need to get through each level. Use this to your advantage, and don't start charging ahead unless you're very confident on what's in front of you. If you're lucky, sometimes enemies will drop extra lives, which are going to come crucial, especially in your first couple of plays. Transform once again into Megagon, and take out 2 lions this time, and then get ready for the actual boss of Zone number 1. This giant lion head appears. Use your Charge Blast by holding up an attack in order to blast the lion a couple of times, sending him up into the air, in which case another head will appear behind him. When he comes back down, launch a couple more blasts into him, or use your fist to take him out and move on to Zone 2-1. In Amagon, you'll find out that the bosses in the game are actually really easy as long as you have the Megagon form, and you'll find yourself having a lot harder time getting through the stages than dealing with the bosses at the end of the stage. At the beginning of 2-1, we see these elephant enemies, which is the first of a larger type of enemy, and they take a lot of shots to take out. The elephant enemies in this level aren't too bad because they move pretty slowly, and if they come too close to you, you may be able to jump over them and then continue moving on or attack them from behind them. However, you'll find out that a lot of the other enemies that move basically the same way as the elephants will either dash away from you when you try to jump into you themselves, or move faster away from you when you jump over them. When taking down the bigger enemies, you keep backing up, ducking down, and firing at them, just to avoid most of their projectiles, as well as trying to actually take them out. Unfortunately though, if they get too close, just jump over them to try to avoid taking any damage, or if you need to, switch to your Megagon form if you have it. On this moving turtle part, stay to the far left of it and you should be able to avoid all the fire and drops of the enemies during that scene. For the most part, staying on the left side will protect us during the flying turtle scenes, as we'll have a couple more of them. However, on the very last one, there is one enemy that you'll have to take out, because he will hit you if you don't. These enemies come out 3 at a time, so just destroy all 3 of them before deciding to jump over the pit that they're spawning from. One of the most annoying type of enemies in the game are definitely the Mosquito Enemies, as they come flying in, usually 2 or 3 at a time, and then they go immediately back out, and if you're not careful and walk too fast, they may run right into you when they're coming onto screen. Usually with the Mosquitoes, I like to either be above them if you can in certain levels, or when you're going to have to be on the same level with them, just staying still or back away when you see them spawning. It's better to be safe than sorry when it comes to these guys. At the end of the level, if you have these elephants following you, just turn in the Megagon real quick, take them out, and move on to Zone 2-2. This whole area with a lot of the frog enemies, stay on the bottom part. I find it a little bit easier to take them out, because the enemies on the bottom, when they spit out their projectile, may hit you if you're on the top portion, and while on the bottom you'll have a better chance of dodging the ones from the top area. Right here we have some suicidal enemies, as they're just going to jump from one pit right into another pit, so just wait for them to go over before jumping over those pits. Here we have another one of the areas where we have the flying turtle sequence. Stay on the far left side and you'll be able to dodge most of the enemies. Near the end of the sequence though, get ready, because you have to jump up and shoot that last fly enemy, because the projectile it shoots out will hit you no matter where you're standing on the turtle. Sometimes in the game, the hardest thing is getting the Megagon form to actually appear from one of the enemy drops. If you can't find the Megagon form, you're going to have a really almost impossible chance of actually beating the boss of stages. So if you don't have it in the first act of each zone, you may be okay unless you're fighting the lions from the first level. However, when you're in Zone 2 through 6, the first part of each zone will not have a boss battle, but the second part will. So you need to have Megagon for the second part, but you'll be okay if you don't get it in the first part. But even without the boss fights, even the first parts of stages can get pretty brutal in the later zones. After this elephant enemy, I'm going to change him to Amagon because it's time for the boss of Zone 2. This walking tree is actually really easy to deal with. Once it comes on the screen, you use your Fire Blast in order to take out both eyes. After only 3 or 4 hits, the eyes fall out, he falls down, and you complete the zone. Like I said before, the bosses in the game, as long as you have Amagon, are extremely easy.